This is Auntie Up, Indigenous women talking about important shit.
Ani Bojo, welcome to Auntie Up, the podcast. This is the podcast where we celebrate and elevate Indigenous women's voices and all the work that they do. And we're going to celebrate them, especially today for our topic. It is beaded earrings. I'm Jolene Banning, coming to you from Anishinaabe Aki near Nemkiwaju along the northern shores of Gitchagumi in the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory. Both of our guests today are proficient when it comes to beading, and they just create some of the most beautiful works of art that I've ever seen. And they're using beading as a way of learning about their culture and reconnecting to their culture. And they're discovering who they are as Anishinaabe Kwe while doing so. I'm also here with my guest host, Celeste Pedri-Spade. Hey, Celeste, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just wearing some beaded bling to the show since we're talking about beaded earrings. I noticed you're wearing some lovelies as well.
Yes, I am so ready for this conversation. It's really awesome to be here with everybody. I have, like Jolene said, I came appropriately dressed with some of my ear bling, and I also have my appropriate attire on. I can't see the full version, but my beads over diamonds t-shirt. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with our guests because I know one a bit personally through my partner, who when he was actually helping at the Laurentian School of Architecture back in the day, and I've been following her work as well. And her name is Jay Buswa. She's an Anishinaabe and Filipina artist, reconnecting to her Anishinaabe culture. Her mother is from Whitefish River First Nation, or otherwise known as Birch Island, and she's and her mother is also the driving force behind her beadwork. Prior to the pandemic, Jay studied architecture and also Indigenous studies, and she's a first-time mom. Which is amazing. I love seeing the baby pics, I have to say.
Thank you.
Jay is also the face behind the one-woman operation of diving loon beads. So welcome to Auntie Up, Jay.
Thank you.
And Jolene, who's our second guest?
Our other guest is Krista Furioso, but on Instagram, she's known as Only Child Handicrafts. So Krista has been a bead weaver since she was 12 years old. Her family is from Fort William First Nation, right where I'm coming to you from. But she grew up in Thunder Bay and has lived on the West Coast since the mid-90s. She's lived in Vancouver for 20 years, but now calls Salt Springs Island her home. She's a full-time beader, and her business, Only Child Handicrafts, not only supports her family, but is a family business as well, as her daughter and partner now both help with the beadwork. So I don't want to brag or anything, but I also own a couple of earrings from Krista.
Awesome. Hi.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Krista. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm not sure who wants to start. Maybe let's start with Jaden. Tell us how you got started in beading.
So I used to work at a cafe in Sudbury, and there was a group of people who came in and they were beading, and I was just mesmerized. That was like one of the first times I seen it. They were having a bead social and I made all their drinks. And I really enjoyed it. I liked embroidery and things like that. So I wanted to give it a shot. And one of my friends, his mom that worked at the Indigenous Student Council for Laurentian, her and her daughter Logan taught me how to bead, but I couldn't pick it up. So I was very discouraged. And it was maybe about a year later that I tried again, but just by myself I didn't follow any tutorials. I just tried to figure out, learn from the material itself. And I actually finished a piece, and it was pretty wonky. It was my first one, lots of spirit beads, and I fell in love with it. And I just kept challenging myself until where I'm at now, doing intricate designs and stuff like that.
And how about you, Krista?
Well, beadwork came to me in kind of an ironic way, since we're going to be talking about cultural appropriation. So when I was 12, And I was adopted at birth outside of the Native community, and my family that I grew up with is white. And we were on a road trip from Thunder Bay to Southern Ontario. And we were taking the route that you have to go like onto Manitoulin Island, and then there's like a ferry. So we were on Manitoulin Island, and there was this little shop of like Native art and craft, and I just fell in love with beadwork, like not knowing that my father's Native, and I just basically bought myself a little bracelet and then just obsessively like reverse engineered it. When I got home, started collecting beads, and just made myself a little loom from a cereal box. And yeah, it was like definitely a compulsion. And totally not aware that I was Native and that it was inappropriate for me to be doing beadwork. But in hindsight, it's pretty clear to me that it was, I guess it was meant to be, because it's been my craft like since I was 12, so most of my life. Just from that one incident on Manitoulin Island.
And now that you know more about like where you come from, being adopted, how does beading connect you to your culture?
In every way. It has, I guess through social media as well, connecting my beadwork to social media was like the biggest step towards reclaiming my Native identity and rejoining the community, because Instagram is full of Native beaders and we all love beadwork, and many of us share our stories and knowledge through our beadwork, through just through the medium of social media, getting to know each other and each other's stories and how we fit in. It just like beadwork is that language that, regardless of where you're from across Turtle Island, many of us speak that same language and connect immediately with other people that do as well.
And what about you, Jay? Like, how has beading been an important part of, connecting to culture and understanding yourself in relation to your community?
So for me, I found Seldom and a sense of community as well on Instagram through Cedar Lily Beads. I started buying beads from her, and then I found out that she's also from Sudbury. So it was really cool because we went to the same high school and things like that. But through that group, I met people from various nations, like across Turtle Island. And so we would talk about beadwork. We would have bead socials over on Zoom, because I started beading about a year ago when we were pretty deep in the start of the pandemic and stuff like that. But also at the same time, when I found out I was pregnant, it was around the time of like mousse harvesting season. So my family actually got a bull moose, and I wanted to take the opportunity to learn how to like tan my own hide. So that's really when I started, like I was using commercially tanned hide, but until I tried like smoked home tan hide, I was like, this butter, it's nice. Like the smell, it really brings like a sense of belonging too when you're using these beautiful like materials that have been harvested sustainably, that they've been treated with lots of love. Like a lot of hard work went into these pieces, and then they smell like nostalgic. So that was something that really brought me a sense of connection.
Oh man, the smell of smoked moose hide is one of those scents that I just feel like I'm wrapped in love. Like I have a smoked moose hide medallion and matching earrings. And when I opened up my box, when they got shipped to me, as soon as I opened up that box, like the smell, like that was the first thing I could smell. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is familiar. And it just felt like this was like a sense of almost being wrapped in my grandma's arms again. Because I remember being a little girl watching my grandma with at the time it was mainly beavers and minks, but she would be, prepping the hides, getting them ready for selling and whatever else she did with her hides. But it's great when you can get those earrings that are made like just so naturally with resources from Mother Earth, right? It's amazing.
So I'm wondering, I'm a beader myself. My mom beads, my husband beads. We're a family of beaders. And my mom has always taught me the importance of thinking about our work as makers, as sort of medicine and healing, and thinking about, what you put into your work as you do that carefully. And thinking about it sometimes as ceremony or as prayer, because you're going to be gifting that, putting that back out into the world, gifting it to somebody else. So I'm just wondering, perhaps we'll start with Krista. What do you feel when you're beading? Like, what is it? What is your process?
Yeah, I absolutely, it resonates with me, the notion of medicine, because those are my most peaceful moments, sitting in my chair beading. And I think there's like a weird like ASMR aspect to it too. Like it's just so satisfying to like see the bead click into place and your pattern come to life. But it's such a grounding process. Like you're inevitably being still, and like for the most part, you're just able to sit and think, and definitely over the past few years, I've started to bring more intention and cognitively sort of put my good intention into the work that I make. And that comes from seeing people wear my beadwork in really amazing places, like seeing land defenders wearing my work, or seeing, say, like a lawyer wearing my work in court, and knowing that like they've worn that in the sort of spirit of strength. And so it's really important for me to honor that from the beginning of the creation of that piece. I think that it's like massage, I guess. There's a massage therapists often talk about how they get as much out of the massage process as the person that they're massaging. And I think beading is the same. I think that what I get out of it is equal, at least to what, the end product of the person wearing my earrings. Yeah, it's important start to finish. So I've more and more come to respect that, like right from the beginning, picking a palette and like threading a needle and sitting down and like, what am I going to listen to like while I'm making this? And
Auntie Up, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, for real.
Well, it was funny just thinking about this episode today. It just got me creative, and I actually pulled out my beading mat last night, and I sat down and I beaded to probably, I think it was 9 episodes of Rutherford Falls, because I don't have that channel. So I went to a cousin's house last night, and she asked me if I had seen the show yet, and I hadn't. And what I really loved about it was seeing all the representation, like you're talking about, of earrings, right? And it's, to me, it's so important to see that representation. And right now, like you said, I'm wearing earrings by a community member, a Sugarbush family member, Beau Boucher, and he does some of the most intricate patterns. And I think this is called a peyote stitch, if I'm not mistaken. But for me, like wearing earrings is really important for representation, and also like I totally hear what you're saying, where you feel that sense of strength. And for me, it's a way to show the world when I wear my earrings that we're still here and we're not going anywhere. So I totally agree with the representation for seeing beaded earrings out there. And Jay, is representation important to you?
Yes, it really is. I haven't been wearing beaded earrings because of my baby. She's in the grabbing stage and she will rip them out of my ears. So I've just been really careful. But I do miss wearing like big dangly earrings and things like that. So if I do wear some, it's studs. So I have these little antler studs that I wear. They're harder to like grab, but yes, it's very important to me.
And you know what, Jay, you mentioned something earlier about when you were starting to bead. And how it was kind of a bit frustrating, but you mentioned something really important, the idea of the materials teaching or guiding you. And then you also talked about the importance of like you really thinking about where your materials come from. So perhaps can you speak a little bit more about that, like about how the materials that you use, what they teach you?
So a lot of this is actually, I learned in architecture school, like especially when you're looking at wood, wood has a grain and you can go against the grain or you can cut wood and it's not going right. Like you really have to know the material. And by doing that, you have to try and, okay, this didn't work. And, oh, this made me almost cut my finger or this. So with beading, it was really just finding the right techniques, like putting my needle like on an angle I was going through hide and things like that, or then using pliers and as I beaded, I found what worked for me. And honestly, we probably like as a collective, we probably all have our own like tips and tricks like that we've developed over time that someone's like, oh, I didn't know that. And that's like another beautiful aspect of beadwork.
Yeah, so one of the best tips that I discovered is if you're on the road and you run out of beading string, you can use unflavored dental floss from and that could be easily found at any kind of supermarket. So
good tip.
It works. The wax,
Totally true. Yes, totally true.
Yeah.
I've got a beading tip. If you're going through leather and it's a little hard, you don't want to cut your fingers up, cut the tips off of rubber gloves. And so then you just have the little rubber tips on your fingers. And I find like that's
Smart.
it gives you a little traction to hang on to the needle to actually push it through the leather.
I'll have to try that. I'm making a big pouch right now, so my fingers hurt.
Yeah.
Could you, either of one of you, I think, you know, sometimes when we create, we arrive at a destination where there's perhaps a piece that we worked on for a long time or a piece that's particularly meaningful to us. Maybe we'll start with you, Krista, but is there a piece that you're perhaps most proud of or, you know, that you want to comment on?
Yeah, there is a piece that I made I guess either 2019 or 2020. I actually do like almost exclusively off loom beadwork and I don't do bead applique. Like so all of my I do sort of bead woven pieces and pieces with fringe. And so incorporating the traditional like woodland style florals that are from, you know, from our people is not as easy for me to do. Like my beadwork doesn't often look as traditional as those who can, you know, bring those floral elements in and the woodlands sort of style. So I started to really try to figure out how I could bring that into what I do, because it's, you know, like it's the style of my ancestors and it's so beautiful. Like living on the West Coast, you don't really see woodland style artwork here. And so it's really close to my heart when I see it. It just reminds me of Thunder Bay and it reminds me of the first beadwork that I saw as a kid. So I decided to design a fringe piece that was basically like an image, a painting of a Thunderbird for Anemki-Waju, Thunder Mountain, which is where Jolene and I are from. And it turned it like I drew the Thunderbird piece first, and it was one of those things where it just was like everything lined up, like everything went correctly. Like it was my first attempt at making, at even doing like a drawing in woodland style. And it all just came together so wonderfully. I was really proud of the drawing itself. And then translating it into a beaded piece, it's enormous. It's like a big, like bib kind of piece. And it just turned out so perfectly, like better than I could have imagined. And there's just no way that I could ever sell it. I've lent it out to people for photo shoots and stuff. And I'm really, really proud to see it, like hanging on other people's necks in really rad situations. But yeah, that piece is pretty precious to me. That's my first sort of serious attempt to bring my own personal, culture into my beadwork specifically.
Mm-hmm. Krista, I think I know exactly the piece you're talking about. Is it one of the photos that you sent in for your headshot?
Yes.
The Thunderbird necklace?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll post a picture of that and you could see exactly how deadly this piece is that she's talking about, because it is a huge statement piece. Yeah. It's humongous and it's beaded. And the beadwork just portrays the Thunderbird so beautifully. Like that was a really sweet deal. Like, beautiful.
That makes me so happy to hear you say that. That's so special to hear you say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think that for us to all be sitting here talking about beading is pretty special. It makes me think about beading as a political statement, especially, well, even artwork, but beading as well as a political statement, especially when you see pieces like land back or, calling stuff out like that. And I was just wondering, do you ever use your beading or your artwork to create political statements?
I absolutely do, more and more. I created a pair of earrings a few years ago that just a long pair of fringe earrings that just say revolution. And they're by far like everyone's favorite thing that I did, which is such an amazing statement about where, where people are at. People wanting to wear that statement is pretty great. I've sort of added sort of different designs to that, but that one statement, I think I've seen those earrings being worn in places of heavy resistance, and it's a really awesome thing to see.
And now, we'd like to tell you about our sponsors as I share a No Indigenous History moment. Each week, the team at No History provides Auntie Up with little-known facts about Indigenous peoples, places, and things. Did you know a 7-meter beaded octopus bag hangs on the walls of the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, created by Métis artist Janine Crotchy? Why is this piece of art in a museum for human rights, you may ask? Because after Métis families on the prairies were displaced from their land, many settled in road allowances that were set aside by the colonial government for future railway lines and other infrastructure, only to be eventually moved again by force. Road allowance communities were considered the outskirts, the fringes of society and law. So many Métis people settled there so they could continue their way of life, hunting, trapping, living off the land. It was a place where they could be who they have always been before they were enfranchised. The octopus bag is beaded with the traditional Métis florals and leaves with a rich color palette. The Métis people were known far and wide for their beadwork and were often referred to as the flower beadwork people. Their work is similar to the Anishinaabe beadwork because of familiar ties, gifts, and trades. Beadwork connects us to our teachings, culture, ancestors, and identity. In the middle are the names of 9 road allowance communities like Park Valley and Round Prairie. The Métis were given another name, the Road Allowance people. But it's also an act of resilience that they refused to be woven into the fabric of Canada. They are Métis. So is beading a political statement? Absolutely. The seed beads used to bead the 20'4" fire bag because it carried your flint, striker, things needed to start a fire, tells the story that we all need to hear. We're still here, bright, beautiful, intricate, and grounded in our culture. And settlers will always rename your stuff. This has been your No Indigenous History moment. No History is a proud sponsor of Auntie Up.
Jay, I want to bring this up because I know you're a new mom, and we introduced you as a new mom. And I just wondering, how perhaps becoming a new mom for the first time has changed your practice or the way that you do things, other than having to place your beads on all the high countertops, or having to sweep them up more. But I know that I've seen some of the beautiful pictures of your baby on your diving loom beads site. So perhaps can you comment or share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It's perfect for me to talk to you about one of my favorite pieces that I've made. So when I was pregnant, that's when I really started beading a lot more, because I had gotten laid off of work, and I was really challenging myself, in terms of making more intricate designs and really finding inspiration from the forest floor and being how can I translate this image from my mind into wearable art? And so so for me, the pieces that I'm always more proud of are the pieces that I keep for myself or that I gift. It's medicine, and it's nice to make an income with beadwork, but also it reminds you gifting beadwork is also very powerful in itself. So for me, it was this piece for my midwife, and that's when I had my baby already, because I just wanted to experience the birth before making the piece. I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to make for my midwife, and I had an Indigenous midwife, Naomi Wolf, and so I decided to make these long fringe earrings, and they had sage sprigs on them. And my baby was probably about 2 weeks. She was cluster feeding, and it just showed that my time, I don't really have time anymore. So that's when I realized, okay, it changed. I used to be able to sit and do 2 pairs a day, but now it takes me about 2 weeks to 3 weeks sometimes to finish a pair. But I know her sleep schedules now, so I can get a pair done in 2 days now. So it's that's my new schedule. It's really, I used to do 2 pairs a day, and now it's 1 pair per 2 days. So that's how it's changed being a new parent. But yeah, it's also very blissful because I look forward to those moments. I put her down and I'm yes, I can bead. So it's a quiet hobby, which is really nice. I like to watch TV or listen to music, but sometimes I'm just there quietly just beading away, and I can hear my baby. She makes a lot of noise when she sleeps, so it's very sweet.
That's great. And Naomi actually helped me as a midwife as well.
Awesome. She's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, she really is. I just appreciate that, because I think, becoming a mom and also being creating a life and then being a maker as well, right? You have to renegotiate a lot when those things happen in your life, right? You have to become a lot more patient. You have to become a lot more, carve out that time and find the balance, because, I think we often, becoming, these changing roles and becoming mothers, right? You do sometimes long and you miss for those moments, because because beading is so much a part of you, or making is so much a part of you, right? And so I found that as well. I have four little ones that are all under the age of 10, and I still try to carve out those little spaces. And actually, I think that's something that carries on as you become, a mother, and as you become a grandmother. A good friend of mine, Delina White, once told me that, her beading schedule is sometimes waking up at a crazy amount, at 4:30 in the morning, and getting in 2 or 3 hours of work before having to do her grandmother duties. And she once told me that, and I thought, wow, just that commitment, to hear that.
I think it's pretty amazing that you started to really focus on beadwork at a time when you're also just becoming a new mom. That's so amazing, and it just is such a great like you have to bring intention to everything you make, because that time is so precious. That's just such a great like way to start your beading life.
I'm really enjoying it. It's going to be a year in January that I started diving in beads, so coming up soon.
Yeah, nice.
And for someone who's so new to beading, like your beading is so beautiful. Everything
you.
just lines up amazing. Your eye for color and for design and pattern is so spot on. Like I am anxiously watching and waiting to find out when you do your next sale, because I'm going to be the first ones to purchase. But before we even think about buying earrings, I think maybe we should have a conversation about what it means to sell your work or to lay a price to your work. Because I think sometimes, especially maybe as new beaders, we don't necessarily see how we can add a price tag to something that, as we said during this conversation, is medicine, is, you know, a piece of ceremony, is connecting us to culture. But also it takes a lot of time. You know, like Delana White's were waking up in the wee hours of the morning to try to carve out a space and time to bead, because as moms, as aunties, kokums, we do have busy schedules and things that we need to take care of. So for something so valuable and rich in Indigenous culture and tradition and knowledge, how do you put a price on it in a Western capitalist world and stand by that and not feel, you know, bullied to lower your price? Maybe can we start with Krista, because Krista has a few years experience on UJ.
It's probably the hardest part of like having your passion, maybe of any kind, become your livelihood, but obviously 10 times more when it's culturally important, and when you are using it as medicine. It's really tough, because you know you want to honor your own work, and you want to honor the craft itself. I think a lot of damage can be done by people underpricing their work, just in terms of maybe not necessarily Indigenous people, but seeing beadwork be sort of like trivialized by low prices, I think is something that beaders are starting to push against a little bit. Just making sure that our prices also honor the craft itself, and so that you know, other beaders across the board are also able to charge those prices, fair prices for your time and your creativity, but also just to normalize beadwork as a luxury item. I think that message is going around heavily right now, and that's amazing. I can think back to even just like 5 years ago. It wasn't as common to see a pair of beaded earrings that was like $100 even, and now that's absolutely normal. Like that's a, you know, like an absolutely normal thing to see is a good price on beaded earrings.
That's a sale for me.
Yeah, 100%, totally. But that also comes from us as beaders just putting that price tag on and standing by it. Despite, I mean, you have to weigh accessibility against all of that too. Like I want my work to be accessible to people that you know, like can't spend $100 on beadwork. And so the way that I sort of deal with that is sort of the more successful I've become, the more beadwork I just straight up give away to people, and for my own reasons, on my own terms. Like when I see that there's, you know, like someone loves a pair of earrings that I have made, and like they're not going to buy them because they're not in a position to do that. It feels so good. I think just what Jay was saying is that gifting beadwork is also really important, and I think sort of elevating the importance of that along with your success, or along with my success. That's how I've sort of reconciled the accessibility problem and conflict, inner conflict that that we all sort of face when we put any price tag on beadwork. Like there are absolutely people that I want to like wear my beadwork, and yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, I think people just need to get into conversations like this with other beaders that are charging good prices, and have your concerns heard by them, and then be reassured that your prices are good. Like, you're not ripping people off. You're definitely not a capitalist because you are making a living with your artwork. And that, standing firm in that, I guess, is tough at the beginning. But the community itself, I think, is really supportive of other beaders, and we can sort of find strength in each other in that way.
That made me think too about how some beadwork artists are also finding other kinds of medium to share their beadwork that is really accessible. So some people I know, like I believe it was Sky Paul, Heather Stewart, they do stickers of their beadwork that you could put on your laptop or things like that, and also like patches and things like that. So I think those are kind of like nifty, different ideas.
Yeah, those are great. Just seeing more people's designs on patches and, like prints and postcards and stickers. That's so great.
I love earrings. I could shop all day. I could look on Instagram all day looking at earrings and just be in love. Like, that's what if I could have my social media networks flooded, it would be flooded with our art, with our people dancing, drumming, wearing their regalia, wearing their beaded earrings, wearing their leather earrings, wearing their birch bark, and the mediums for earrings too, like using bone and fur and feathers. It's amazing, right? And it really speaks to, I think, our Indigenous worldviews and values of being sustainable, of using every single piece of resource we have. Like, nothing goes to waste, nothing goes to the garbage, right? Jaden, when we were talking earlier this week, like you had mentioned, sometimes just walking in the forest looking for supplies and looking for inspiration for your earrings, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, you found a lot more in the forest than just earring supplies.
I was actually just in Thunder Bay in October, and was fortunate enough to be introduced to Wigwas Birch Bark by the amazing Helen Pelche, who makes birch bark baskets. She sort of brought me through the entire process of harvesting and working with birch bark and adding birch bark into my own work. Especially because the bark itself was harvested by her in our homelands. Like, every little scrap of that bark is like, it's not going anywhere. Like, every piece of dust, every little scrap of it is precious to me, and I'll find a way to use every little bit of it for sure.
That's fantastic.
So I know that we mentioned something, and perhaps it's the not so. We've been talking so much about positive things, and I don't want to put a damper on that, but I think it is still important to talk about the issue of, I think, cultural appropriation, in the sense that, just thinking about this, like, people using now social media, Facebook, to, really augment and heighten the opportunities that anybody can, purchase Indigenous beadwork. There's such a rise of it, right? And so, do you have any advice for people that are turning to social media or looking, to purchase Indigenous beadwork? Any advice to make so that they ensure that they're doing that in a way where they're actually purchasing it from an Indigenous designer?
Yeah, just do even just the most basic sort of investigation will very often tell you if the person is Indigenous, if they're claiming their community. It's something that more and more Indigenous people are feeling is important to include in, say, our Instagram bio, just so that it's like, okay, here's what you need to know about me. Here's my, here's my identity. Here's my community. To sort of be the first step of reassuring people that they are buying from an Indigenous maker. Of course, that just like opens up 20 million cans of worms with Native identity and appropriation and all different kinds of things. But I think just sort of doing your due diligence by maybe if you're suspicious that the person is an Indigenous, like maybe ask them without accusing them. Like that's I think the key is when you're not sure, ask the person what community they're from, without accusing them of not being from that community first. Like in the beginning of your discussion with them, just go in assuming they're another Native person if they're claiming that. And then just take the responsibility to sort of gain as much knowledge about that person as you can. If you have suspicions, then ask around about them. I think that's really important. And I think people are doing that more, like on both sides. People are shopping smarter, and also people, Indigenous makers are offering that information from the start, to sort of to make their identity clearer at the beginning, which I think that's super crucial.
As a new beater, Jaden, what do you think?
I think it's really important. Like even a lot of beaters on Instagram have like frequently asked questions as a highlight, and they give a little bit like they write about me and things like that. But even for myself, I have an about me. And even with my earrings, when people purchase, I send a care card, like treat these earrings like medicine, wear them where you'd be wearing like ceremonial items, but also like wear them appropriately. Don't be wearing them, somewhere you shouldn't be. It's just like, that's how I see it. But yeah, I have a lot of Indigenous people buy my earrings, but a lot of non-Indigenous friends and family that want to help and support me. So it's nice to be able to give a little bit of like care instructions and my process too. Like I really enjoy being like also my packaging is something that I was really proud of because it's all like recycled or compostable. So that was something. So being able to give a card, it's like multifunction. It's like my earring card has my care instructions, but it's also where I like write the little handwritten thank you note and stuff for every order, because that's just how important it is to support small businesses.
It really is important to support small businesses, especially like Indigenous businesses, right? Like we need to elevate ourselves, and this is the perfect opportunity. And I will never stop buying beaded earrings. I will never stop wearing.
So
I will
great
never
to
stop
hear.
gifting.
You know what? I always like whenever I put a new like batch of stuff up on my website, I'm like, how are people buying more earrings? Like I saw this person buy something last time, and like, don't they have enough earrings? And it's true, like Native women never ever have enough earrings. It's like
never enough.
Pretty great for
Never
earring
enough.
makers.
Well, Krista and Jaden, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to share us a little bit about your art and the process in which you make these amazing, beautiful pieces of beaded earrings and everything else that you guys are making, expanding from earrings. I could talk with you guys all day, but I think I would rather let you guys get back to work so that I could possibly get some Christmas shopping done.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For having me. I'm so happy that this podcast exists. Thank you so much for having me.
Miigwech.
Yeah, and in an upcoming episode, we're going to see if Jolene can make bannock. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that.
That's exciting.
And don't forget to follow us on all your socials.
Auntie Up is produced by Jolene Banning, Kim Wheeler, and Sam Makwa for Makwa Creative. Our executive producer is Tanya Talaga. Our partner is Antica Productions. Auntie Up is sponsored by No History and Anna Mickey, Indigenous innovation since 2003. Follow and like us on socials at Auntie Up Podcast on Facebook, Auntie.up on Instagram, and Auntie Up 1 on Twitter.